What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected actresses goes head-to-head with one of daytime television's most outspoken hosts? The clash between Meryl Streep and Joy Behar on The View became so intense that it ended with security escorting the Oscar winner off the set. This is a story about artistic integrity versus political activism, and how a simple interview turned into a career-defining moment that no one saw coming. Before we dive into this explosive confrontation, make sure to hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you think really drives these kinds of heated exchanges between celebrities and talk show hosts. The View's iconic table was set for what producers thought would be a routine promotional interview. Meryl Streep had arrived at the ABC studios that morning to discuss her latest film, a biographical drama about a pioneering female scientist. The hair and makeup team had worked their magic, the lighting was perfect, and the audience was buzzing with anticipation. Joy Behar, known for her sharp wit and political commentary, had prepared what she considered to be thought-provoking questions that would generate the kind of viral moments The View thrived on. As the cameras rolled and the familiar theme music faded, Whoopi Goldberg introduced their distinguished guest with the kind of reverence typically reserved for acting royalty. Meryl Streep, elegant in a navy blazer and pearls, smiled graciously as the audience erupted in applause. The first few minutes proceeded exactly as expected, with softball questions about the film's production, working with the director, and the challenges of portraying a real-life historical figure. But Joy Behar had other plans. As the conversation naturally flowed toward the film's themes of female empowerment and breaking barriers in science, Behar saw her opening. "Meryl, this character you're playing, she fought against institutional sexism in the 1950s. Don't you think it's hypocritical for you to play such a strong female character when you've been notably silent about the current political climate and women's rights?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Streep's smile faltered slightly, but she maintained her composure. "I think my responsibility as an actress is to bring characters to life authentically. I don't believe my personal political views should overshadow the story we're trying to tell." Behar leaned forward, her tone becoming more aggressive. "But Meryl, you have a platform. You have influence. When someone like you stays silent while women's reproductive rights are under attack, aren't you complicit in that oppression?" The other hosts exchanged glances, sensing the shift in atmosphere. Sunny Hostin attempted to redirect the conversation, but Behar pressed on. "I mean, let's be honest here. You've won 3 Academy Awards. You've been nominated 21 times. You have more influence than most politicians. When you choose to stay in your ivory tower instead of speaking out, what message does that send to young women?" Streep's posture stiffened. "Joy, I appreciate your passion, but I fundamentally disagree with your premise. I've spent my entire career portraying complex female characters, many of whom have inspired generations of women. I believe that's my contribution to the conversation." "That's not enough," Behar shot back, her voice rising. "Playing dress-up and pretending to be someone else isn't activism. It's entertainment. We need real voices speaking real truths about real issues." The tension in the studio was palpable. Audience members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, and the other hosts looked increasingly concerned about the direction of the interview. Whoopi tried to interject, "Joy, maybe we should." "No, Whoopi," Behar interrupted, her finger pointing directly at Streep. "I'm tired of celebrities who think they can just show up, promote their movies, and pretend like the world isn't burning around them. You want to play heroes on screen? How about being one in real life?" Streep's famous composure began to crack. "Joy, you're being incredibly presumptuous. You don't know what I do privately. You don't know what causes I support or what conversations I have behind closed doors. Not everything needs to be a public spectacle. Private conversations don't change laws," Behar countered. "Private donations don't inspire movements. You're hiding behind this facade of artistic purity while people are suffering." The audience was completely silent now, sensing they were witnessing something unprecedented. Sarah Haynes attempted to lighten the mood with a joke, but it fell flat. The cameras continued rolling, capturing every moment of the escalating confrontation. "Joy," Streep said, her voice now carrying a steely edge. "I've been acting professionally for over 4 decades. I've portrayed everyone from Margaret Thatcher to Julia Child. I've explored complex social issues through my work. If you can't see the value in that, Then perhaps you don't understand the power of storytelling. Storytelling? Behar laughed sarcastically. You think putting on a costume and reading lines written by someone else is going to change the world? Meanwhile, real women are losing their rights, and you're worried about your artistic integrity. The confrontation was spiraling beyond anyone's control. Streep stood up from her chair, her movements deliberate and measured. Joy, I came here to talk about a film that celebrates a woman who made groundbreaking scientific discoveries despite facing incredible discrimination. Instead, you've chosen to attack me personally and question my values based on your own narrow definition of activism. I'm questioning your relevance, Behar replied, also rising from her seat. You're a relic from a time when celebrities could just stay neutral and pretty. That luxury doesn't exist anymore. The other hosts were now actively trying to de-escalate the situation. Alyssa Farah Griffin suggested they take a commercial break, but neither Streep nor Behar seemed interested in backing down. The confrontation had taken on a life of its own, fueled by fundamental disagreements about celebrity responsibility and the role of entertainment in social change. A relic? Streep repeated, her voice now carrying decades of professional authority. Joy, I've been using my craft to explore human complexity and social issues since before you had a television career. Every role I choose is deliberate. Every character I embody carries meaning. But apparently that's not enough for you unless it comes with a political endorsement. Behar's eyes flashed with anger. Don't you dare lecture me about my career. I've been fighting for progressive causes on television for 25 years. I've used my platform to challenge injustice, to call out hypocrisy, to demand accountability. What have you done besides collect awards and give pretty speeches? The studio audience was completely captivated by the unprecedented drama unfolding before them. This wasn't the typical celebrity interview they'd expected. This was a clash of ideologies, a battle between two strong-willed women who represented different approaches to influence and responsibility. You want to know what I've done? Streep asked, her voice rising for the first time. I've given voice to characters who couldn't speak for themselves. I've brought attention to stories that might otherwise be forgotten. I've shown audiences the complexity of the human experience. But apparently, unless I'm holding a protest sign or endorsing candidates, none of that matters to you. It doesn't matter if it doesn't create change, Behar fired back. Your pretty performances might make people feel good for 2 hours, but they go home to the same broken system. They face the same injustices. Entertainment without action is just escapism. Whoopi Goldberg made another attempt to regain control of the show. Ladies, I think we're getting a little off track here. Meryl, why don't you tell us about working with the director on this project? But Streep was no longer interested in discussing her film. The attack on her life's work had struck too deep a nerve. Joy, you seem to think that unless someone is shouting their opinions from every rooftop, they're not making a difference. But real change often happens quietly, thoughtfully, through the stories we tell and the conversations we inspire. That's a convenient excuse for inaction. Behar snapped. You're one of the most recognizable faces in America. When you stay silent about critical issues, you're making a choice. You're choosing comfort over courage. The accusation of cowardice was the final straw. Streep's composure, legendary throughout Hollywood for its unshakable nature, finally cracked completely. How dare you question my courage? I've spent my entire career taking risks, challenging myself, pushing boundaries. I've portrayed controversial figures, tackled difficult subjects, and never once compromised my artistic vision for commercial success. Artistic vision, Behar repeated mockingly. Is that what you call it when you refuse to take a stand on issues that actually matter? When women are fighting for basic rights, and you're worried about your artistic integrity? The other hosts watched in stunned silence as the confrontation escalated beyond anything they'd ever witnessed on the show. Sarah Haynes looked genuinely concerned, while Sunny Hostin appeared to be calculating whether intervention was possible or advisable. You know what your problem is, Joy? Streep said, stepping closer to Behar's position at the table. You think the only way to make a difference is through confrontation and controversy. You mistake volume for substance, anger for effectiveness. Not everyone needs to be a political warrior to contribute to society. And you know what your problem is? Behar shot back, matching Streep's intensity. You think you're above the fight? You think you can float above the messiness of real life and still claim to be relevant? But neutrality in the face of injustice is complicity. The studio had become a powder keg. The audience sat in rapt attention, phones discreetly recording what they sensed was television history in the making. The crew continued filming, unsure whether they should intervene or document this unprecedented moment. "I never claimed to be neutral," Streep replied, her voice now deadly calm. "I claim to be thoughtful. I claim to be deliberate. I claim to believe that art can change hearts and minds in ways that political rhetoric never could. But clearly, that's not enough for someone who measures impact by Twitter followers and cable news appearances." The personal attack on Behar's media career was a direct hit. Her face flushed with anger as she prepared her response. "At least I'm not hiding behind some pretentious notion of artistic purity while the world burns around me. At least I'm willing to get my hands dirty fighting for what I believe in." "And what exactly have you accomplished with all that fighting?" Streep asked, her tone now cutting. "What laws have you changed? What injustices have you corrected? Or do you just create noise and call it progress?" The question hit Behar like a physical blow. Her career, built on commentary and criticism, was being challenged by someone questioning whether talk show activism actually created meaningful change. "I've informed people. I've challenged power. I've given voice to important issues." "You've created controversy," Streep corrected. "You've generated headlines. You've turned serious issues into entertainment. And now you're trying to do the same thing to me." The accusation that Behar was exploiting serious issues for entertainment value was devastating. It struck at the core of her professional identity and the justification for her confrontational style. The other hosts recognized the conversation had moved far beyond salvageable. "You think you're better than everyone else?" Behar said, her voice now shaking with rage. "You think your awards and your accolades make you special? But you're just another privileged celebrity who's lost touch with reality. And you're just another talk show host who mistakes opinions for insights," Streep replied coldly. "The difference is, I don't pretend my work is more important than it is. I don't claim to be saving the world from a television studio." The personal attacks had reached a point where recovery seemed impossible. What had started as a political disagreement had devolved into character assassination from both sides. The audience could sense that something fundamental had shifted, that this wasn't just a heated debate but a complete breakdown of professional civility. Whoopi made one final attempt to restore order. "Ladies, I think we need to take a step back here. This has gotten way too personal. And I think we should." "No, Whoopi," Behar interrupted, her focus never leaving Streep. "I want to know why someone with her platform thinks she's too good to fight for what's right. I want to know why she thinks art is more important than activism." "Because art endures," Streep replied, her voice now carrying the weight of her entire career. "Because the stories we tell today will still matter in 50 years. Because changing how people think is more powerful than changing how they vote." The philosophical difference between the two women had become irreconcilable. Behar believed in immediate, visible action, while Streep believed in the long-term power of cultural influence. Neither was willing to concede ground, and the confrontation showed no signs of de-escalating. "You want to talk about enduring?" Behar said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Let's talk about what endures. Oppression endures when good people do nothing. Injustice endures when celebrities stay silent. Your precious artistic legacy won't mean anything if we don't have a democracy left to appreciate it." Streep's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Joy, you're so busy performing your outrage that you've forgotten how to actually listen. You've turned every conversation into a political weapon. You can't even interview someone about their work without trying to score points for your cause." "My cause?" Behar laughed bitterly. "My cause is justice. My cause is equality. My cause is making sure people like you can't just sit in your mansions and pretend everything is fine while the rest of us fight for basic human rights." The class warfare angle was a new low in the confrontation. Streep had built her career on her craft, not her wealth, and the suggestion that she was out of touch because of her success was particularly galling. "You think attacking my success somehow validates your argument?" You think because I've been fortunate in my career, my opinions don't matter? I think your success has insulated you from reality, Behar replied. I think you've forgotten what it's like to struggle, to fight, to really need change instead of just talking about it in abstract terms. The audience was witnessing something unprecedented in daytime television. This wasn't just a disagreement between two public figures. It was a complete breakdown of the social contract that typically governs celebrity interviews. The veneer of politeness had been stripped away, revealing fundamental differences in worldview and approach. You want to talk about struggle? Streep asked, her voice now carrying decades of suppressed frustration. I've struggled my entire career to be taken seriously as an actress. I've fought for complex roles, for better representation of women, for stories that matter. But apparently, none of that counts unless I'm holding a press conference about it. That's exactly right, Behar shot back. Your personal struggles don't matter when other people are facing real oppression. Your career challenges don't compare to women losing their reproductive rights or minorities facing systemic discrimination. The dismissal of Streep's professional struggles was the final insult. Throughout her career, she had faced sexism, ageism, and countless other barriers, but she had chosen to address them through her work rather than through public activism. Behar's suggestion that these struggles were somehow less valid than political causes was devastating. You know what, Joy? Streep said, her voice now deadly quiet. I came here to discuss a film about a woman who changed the world through her scientific contributions. She didn't need to be a political activist to make a difference. She didn't need to appear on talk shows to validate her impact. She just did the work. And look how that worked out for her. Behar replied cruelly. Nobody remembers her name. Nobody knows her story. She's just another forgotten woman who thought her work would speak for itself. The attack on the scientist Streep was portraying was beyond the pale. It suggested that individual achievement was meaningless unless it was accompanied by political activism, that professional excellence was worthless without public advocacy. For Streep, who had built her entire identity around the craft of acting, this was an attack on everything she believed in. That's exactly why I made this film, Streep said, standing up from her chair with newfound resolve. To make sure her story isn't forgotten. To show that there are many ways to change the world, and not all of them require a television platform. And that's exactly why nothing ever changes, Behar countered, also rising to her feet. Because people like you think making a movie is the same as making a difference. You think entertainment is activism. The two women now stood facing each other across the interview table, their confrontation having reached a crescendo that seemed impossible to resolve. The other hosts had given up trying to mediate, recognizing that this had moved beyond their control. I think, Streep said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had commanded respect in Hollywood for decades, that you've confused passion with effectiveness. You've confused volume with impact, and you've confused your platform with actual power. And I think, Behar replied, matching Streep's intensity, that you've confused privilege with principle, you've confused comfort with courage, and you've confused artistic pretension with actual contribution. The personal attacks had reached a point where neither woman could back down without losing face. What had started as a political disagreement had become a fundamental challenge to each woman's professional identity and life choices. At this moment, something unprecedented happened. Streep began to remove her microphone, her movements deliberate and final. I don't need to sit here and be lectured by someone who thinks controversy is the same as conviction. And I don't need to pretend that celebrity worship is more important than actual issues, Behar replied, her voice rising to match Streep's departure preparations. The studio fell into stunned silence as America's most respected actress prepared to walk off the set of one of daytime television's most popular shows. The audience sat frozen, unsure whether to applaud, intervene, or simply witness this unprecedented moment in television history. Whoopi made one final, desperate attempt to salvage the situation. Meryl, please, let's just take a breath here. We can work this out. But Streep was already moving toward the exit, her dignity intact despite the chaos surrounding her. Some things can't be worked out, Whoopi. Some differences are irreconcilable. As she reached the edge of the set, Streep turned back to face Behar one final time. Joy, I hope someday you learn the difference between making noise and making change. Until then, I'll continue doing what I do best, telling stories that matter. And I'll continue doing what I do best, Behar replied, her voice following Streep's departure, holding people accountable for their choices, even when they don't like it. The cameras continued rolling as security personnel, sensing the volatile atmosphere, moved to escort Streep from the building. Not because she posed any threat, but because the situation had deteriorated beyond the point where a normal interview conclusion was possible. The most decorated actress of her generation was being escorted out of a daytime talk show, not in handcuffs, but in the kind of dignified exodus that only someone of her stature could manage. As the studio doors closed behind Meryl Streep, the remaining hosts sat in stunned silence, trying to process what they had just witnessed. Joy Behar, still standing at the interview table, looked around at her colleagues with a mixture of defiance and uncertainty. She had won the confrontation in the sense that she had remained on set, but the cost of that victory was becoming increasingly clear. The audience, still processing the unprecedented drama they had just witnessed, began to murmur among themselves. Some seemed supportive of Behar's aggressive questioning, while others appeared sympathetic to Streep's position. The divide in the studio audience reflected the broader cultural divide that had just played out on national television. What had started as a routine promotional interview had become a defining moment for both women, a clash that would be analyzed, debated, and remembered long after the camera stopped rolling. The fundamental question of celebrity responsibility, the role of entertainment in social change, and the effectiveness of different approaches to activism had been laid bare in the most public way possible. This confrontation represented more than just a disagreement between two public figures. It was a microcosm of the broader cultural tensions that define our current moment, played out between two women who had chosen radically different approaches to using their platforms and influence. So what do you think? Was Joy Behar right to challenge Meryl Streep's approach to activism? Or did she go too far in attacking someone who chose to make a difference through their art rather than their politics? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about the moments when celebrity interviews go completely off the rails.